Hey guys, welcome to the Curt Schilling Baseball Show, number 22, according to Bill. That's a screw up, Bill, then it's your fault.
I've got a good count going here,
Okay,
Curt.
okay. Have a good
I'm
weekend?
positive. I did. I had a really good weekend. Got to watch a bunch of baseball and saw something that I didn't expect to see that we'll talk about a little later. But
Yep. We both had a much better weekend than fans and players in St. Louis.
correct.
The Cardinals, and we're going to start there. The Cardinals have the worst record in the National League. They're 11-24, 2-8 in their last 10. By far and away, the most shocking team on the bad side of things to start the season. I didn't expect them to start 24-11, but I sure as heck didn't expect them to start 11-24. And there is a far bigger problem looming for the Cardinals. I'm going to talk about, so Willson Contreras signed a 5-year, $87.5 million contract to take over for Yadier Molina, probably one of the three best catchers to ever play the game, all around, offensive, defensive, game calling, and whatnot. And if you just go back and look at his metrics over his career, he was a game caller, a game planner. He knew the game. He had baseball IQ in the billions. Offensively, he was a stud when he was younger and healthier. He still hit the ball at the end of his career, but he was a manager's dream. You know, I always talk about catchers as major league managers because a lot of them end up being good. He's one of those guys that will be that. He was a complete package. And here's the thing. Willson Contreras. So Ollie Marmol made the comment, and I'm going to translate this without the use of a bleeper. Ollie Marmol, these are excerpts from his quote. He is having trouble executing the game plan, lacks familiarity with the pitching staff. That is to say, he doesn't pay attention to when it comes to planning the game, and the pitchers don't like him. Those are probably straight translations from baseballese to fandom. And that there's okay. What are we? 4 weeks, 5 weeks into the season.
5 weeks into the season.
Right. How many weeks of spring training do we have? 9.
9 weeks. Yep.
All right. So we're 14 weeks in. Familiarity with the pitching staff generally takes about a week in spring training to get to know your pitchers, get probably 2 to 3 outings at most with them, some bullpens. A lot of times good catchers will go down and catch bullpens of the staff, the starters, just to get a feel, talk, and that's where I can walk through things with my catchers. And so I'll take you through kind of my evolution as a pitcher as it relates to my catchers was very different. When I came up in 1988, I had Mickey Tettleton and Terry Kennedy, 2 veteran guys, not really teachers, but veteran guys who I just listened to. Then Bob Melvin comes along in 89 and 90, more of a teacher. I go to Arizona or to Houston in 91. I get Craig Biggio, and Craig was not a catcher by trade. I mean, he was, but he wasn't. He was an outfielder, infielder, athlete, and probably not. He wasn't. I don't think he was in the big leagues to be a catcher anyway. And I think he proved that as well. And then I went to the Phillies, and I had my first old school, hardcore leader mentality in Darren Daulton, who was, and you've heard me talk about him in the past, the best leader I've ever had. Outstanding defensive catcher, probably underrated a little bit. And I also had a lot of guys in Philly over my 10 years. Todd Pratt was the backup. Todd Pratt was probably the first guy I ever felt physically had to get committed. He wanted to call a good game. He wanted after the game to be recognized for game calling. And that's not, believe it or not a very common trait. A lot of young catchers over the years. Gary Bennett was one good one. Had Benito Santiago, probably as gifted as anybody ever defensively, physically. Did not care about calling a game. Left it all on you and you alone. A lot of catchers 2 years. Went to Arizona. Had Damian Miller, Kelly Stinnett. Damian was a phenomenal catcher. I at that point in my career, I brought him into the game plan process. And as I got older, I did that. And as my game planning evolved, so did my relationship with my catchers. Then I went to Boston, and the end of my career, I was caught by probably the best all-around preparation player I ever played with in Jason Varitek. Also very underrated backup in Doug Mirabelli, who was a phenomenal game caller, high baseball IQ, and all the things that go with that. In Philadelphia for quite a few years, I had Mike Lieberthal. I had Mike from a rookie to when I left, and he was a veteran. He caught almost all of my games when he came up. And his growth was evolution. And here's the thing. The catching job in the big leagues encompasses so much to be good, right? If you aren't good, if you are having trouble executing a game plan, or you lack familiarity with the pitching staff, you're not somebody that pays attention in the pre-series meetings. You're not somebody that goes out there and walks through a game plan with your pitcher and buys in and all the things that go with that. And I mean, but there's so much more than just that. But that's the first thing. That's the big thing. And so as my career went on, I became more in control of my game plan and basically told my catchers, here's what I'm going to do, and here's what I need you to do. There's other pieces to this. While we still have human umpires, there's pitch framing. And you've seen the Ivy League guys, create metrics and stats for catchers that have stolen pitches through pitch framing and whatnot. There's the relationship with the pitcher, probably the most underrated, but probably in the top 2 or 3 most important factors for me was my catcher's relationship with the umpire. Because as long as there is a human umpire back there, you've got a human with flaws, right? And I was very explicit with my catchers. I didn't want to interact with the umpire as much as I could avoid it, because it's a relationship. If I have to physically interact with the umpire, all the fans can see that. At home, that means they start booing the umpire. On the road, that means they start getting louder and getting into the game. And neither of those things do I want. No matter, even if it's CB Buckner, or Angel Hernandez, who was horrific. I don't want to add to their misery and make them suck even more, right? And I had a book on umpires. I knew their tendencies. Vegas knew their tendencies, and I would follow that. The odds and percentages of what umpires did during games. So I needed my catcher to manage that, right? So you've got pitch framing, you've got a game plan from the pitcher. Then you have to have your game plan for all the relievers when they come in. Then you have to have the other hitters' knowledge of the opponent's hitters and what they're going on, what they're doing. Understand the umpire that day. Is he having a good day or a bad day? Do I want to perk him up, or do I need him to start getting more consistent, blah, 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 because I want to protect my pitcher, which, by the way, that's one of the other small factors. You're the first guy physically. If a hitter reaches a pitcher, for the most part, that's the catcher's fault. When a hitter charges the mound, he should never, ever get out of the batter's box, because a good catcher won't ever allow that to happen. A good catcher will go out in front or grab and stop. And that generally tends to narrow down their job description. But all of those things are crucial. And when you're getting a couple numbers, the Cardinals pitching staff, 4.78 ERA is 8th worst. 5th most. So here's another thing. They have the 5th most wild pitches thrown, the 5th highest whip, 2nd most total hits, 2nd most hits per 9. He has the 4th highest error total. And 39 wild pitches. Not all wild pitches are wild pitches. That's another thing. There are wild pitches that should be pass balls. There are wild pitches that shouldn't get past you. Go back and take a look at Yadier Molina's totals for wild pitches over the course of his season and his career. Good catchers turn wild pitches into blocks. And then there's a whole other game to this. All that is to say, what I believe is this. Willson Contreras is done catching for the St. Louis Cardinals. You've got a hitter who, by the way, is hitting 270, which is nice, with a 765 OPS, 20th among catchers in the big leagues as your DH. Because you've told him basically, and I'm sure the conversation was probably a little bit more heated and animated in the background, but if I'm Adam Wainwright, I would assume there's already meetings that have happened between him and which is, hey, dude, listen. And I told Mike Lieberthal, I'll never forget this. When Mike Lieberthal came up, before his first start with me, and he'll tell you this, I sat him down and walked him through what I expected of him. Obviously, it was a lighter load as a rookie, but one of the things I told him, I said, listen, I don't care. And I said, don't take this personally. I don't care if you go 0 for 4 and you punch out 4 times. I don't care. If you call the great game, that's all that matters to me. Your offensive output is gravy. I need a coach and a captain and a teammate back there catching. And tried to make him understand, because Darren Dalton was indifferent. And by that, I mean, in the 7th inning of a game, I didn't know if Dutch had hit 3 homers or punched out 3 times. He was talking to me and making me feel like, hey, listen, the game is the most important thing to me, calling this game. Whether they believe it or not, giving off that air is an enormously important thing for pitchers, for good pitchers. And then, relievers, they'll talk about it. The bullpen guys, when you go in, does the catcher have a game plan for your stuff? Does the catcher know what's going on, or do you have to go in and prepare him for that? Now hopefully you'll understand why I think in baseball, catching is kind of like goaltending and quarterbacking, in the sense it takes longer to develop, or NHL defenseman, because there's so much more than what you see. And there's an enormous depth to it if you're good. If you're not good, and let me give you an example of a guy that it wasn't that he was not good. Benito Santiago was an outstanding defensive catcher and a phenomenal teammate, but he didn't really care too much about calling a game. So I knew that. I just knew if I held runners close, no one was stealing, because he was going to throw them out. And he was focused on his hitting. And I addressed that, because physically he was fine defensively. And there were other guys who I had catchers, young guys that would catch me and wouldn't catch me again, because they didn't get it. They didn't want to get it. Their baseball IQ didn't get it. But I wanted to work with the same catcher, not necessarily the same guy as a person. Like, I didn't pick a guy out, but I wanted the same catcher for 35 starts. And if I changed out, the only 2 guys I think I was ever really comfortable changing out were, well, not the only 2, but 2 of the big ones were Todd Pratt and Doug Mirabelli, because those guys took an enormous, Chad Moeller did too, Rod Barajas in Arizona took a lot of, and they understood the importance of calling a good game, because at the time I pitched, I was a veteran to those guys. So that was a big deal to them. But here's the other piece to this. I'll go back to the umpires. Umpires, they're human, right? There are umpires who hate certain catchers and umpires who love certain catchers. And I'll give you an example. There was a certain guy during my era who was a continual Gold Glove winner. The umpires despised him catching a game, despised it, because he blocked the strike zone. He didn't give them good looks. He let balls go through that would hit them when there was nobody on base. And they were very vocal about it. I knew as a pitcher that the umpire doesn't like this guy behind the plate. And so you took advantage of that any way you could. And there's another myth and another thing going out there. Big catchers aren't necessarily a good thing. And I say that for this reason. Big catchers take up space. Space gives the umpires a lot less strike zone to look at. If you look at the old days, the umpires that wore the big chest protectors that squared up behind home plate and called the strike zone were much more able to command the strike zone than the guys who wear all that goofy looking crap that makes them look cool, and they have to stand off to the side. And big catchers aren't good for that. Big catchers, Mark Parent, I think, was 6'6". It was a challenge. And umpires said, listen, he's just huge, man. I have trouble getting both sides or getting the outside of the strike zone. Now, Mark made up for it in the sense that he was great with young umpires. He knew how to play that game, very good at playing that game. Chris Hoyles, I had in Baltimore, who developed, I think, was a guy who was very cerebral, very, very high baseball IQ, understood the whole game, and also had Cal Ripken at shortstop to help. So this Willson Contreras thing isn't just a weekend story that's going to pass. This is something that is going to be a lengthy, if not a 5-year problem. You're not going to get rid of him. He's now your DH. You've told him he can't catch your pitching staff. So what you have to think about is if they bring him back behind the plate, It's not something as simple as, hey, Wilson's catching tomorrow. There's discussions about why he's not catching, and it's going to be uncomfortable. And so that needs to happen. But when you see the quotes, he is having trouble executing the game plan. He doesn't pay attention in pitchers' meetings. He doesn't understand how we're attacking hitters, and he doesn't understand our pitchers. And he lacks familiarity with the pitching staff. There are some pitchers that have bitched and moaned about Willson Contreras. That's the gist of that whole conversation. Real quick, let's go off. Hey, anything there, Billy?
No, the only other thing that went through my mind was you bring a free agent in who's making $87 million in 5 years. There's an expectation based on that player, and everything you just laid out about that means that you're losing faith in management. It's an avalanche of bad things.
Well, hold on a second. That is absolutely on the GM.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you look at what these guys do these days, when they, all of the history and background. I don't know if you've watched, what was it, Draft Day with Kevin Costner?
Yeah.
The amount of information you gather on a player before you commit a long-term contract for GMs is absolutely astronomically crucial. And think about this as well. How many good hitting catchers are there in the big leagues?
Yeah.
Right. Adley Rutschman is the unicorn, right? Why did the Cubs put so little effort into retaining him?
Exactly.
Right. This is almost and I not the same. Russell Wilson with the Seattle Seahawks. Right? Everybody thought, well, how the hell could you let a franchise quarterback go? Well, here you go. Here's the reasons. Because they get into a different environment, all the stuff that they've become, and this is a veteran, right? Veterans establish themselves in certain ways. Russell Wilson's not doing anything different in Denver than he did in Seattle. Willson Contreras isn't doing anything different in Chicago than he did in St. Louis. This is who they paid for. That's on the GM.
Yeah.
So anyway, Tampa. So listen, I love the Yankees because I was in love with George Steinbrenner my whole life. I think Brian Cashman's a stud. I love Aaron Boone, and I think I love any team that does what they do. Although I hated them when I was in Boston. They were the fans commenting in April about Tampa Bay's week schedule. Oh, they're 17-0 because they haven't played anybody. Tampa just took 2 or 3 from the Yankees, and Sunday was a gut punch for me. It brought back horrible memories. Sunday in the 6th inning, going into the 5th, Gerrit Cole had a 6-0 lead. That's game over. Right. Game over. I bet you if you look at his lifetime numbers, and I should have done that. I didn't do that. But I'll bet you he's something like 101 right. When leading by 3 or more, or 4 more after 6. Anyway, Tampa, remind me that, Tampa came back. They won. They came back and tied it up, 3-run homer in the 6th. Gerrit Cole coughs up the lead. Tampa wins. I can tell you a couple things. First of all, Gerrit Cole will sleep 0 hours over the next 96 because these are gut-wrenching losses. And Tampa is legitimate for real. Everything you want to bitch about that week schedule gave them, they're real, right? They are real. Everything about them. They're first in the major leagues in batting average, runs, run differential, OPS, ERA, and WHIP. So basically, Tampa is a 25-man version of Shohei Ohtani.
Right.
And the Yankees are now 10 games behind them. That's getting dangerous. And I'll end the show by sharing this story with you. 2 stories, actually. I was in, this was 2004. 2004. We're in Toronto. I had a 7-0 lead in the 5th inning. Fly ball down the left field line, Carlos Delgado. Manny Ramirez nonchalant down to catch it, lets it go. It bounces in and goes out for a ground rule double. I can't breathe. I literally have like reflux on the mound because he just nonchalant the ball. Give up a run or 2, I can't remember. Come out of the inning and I put my glove down and I'm headed down to the end of the bench. And Jason Veritek stops me. He goes, "Nope, you can't." I'm like, what do you mean I can't? He goes, not during the game. This is not the time or place. And I'm like, well, when the fuck is it the time or place? He's like, I'll handle it. I'm like, okay. This is 100% on me. I go out in the 7th inning, give up 3 more runs. It's 7-4. 2 outs, bases loaded. Chris Gomez is at the plate. Run the count full. Couple foul balls, I think. 3-2 split, grand slam. I'm sitting on the mound as in disbelief to the point of I come out, we lose the game. I'd never done that before. Now, I actually had done that before, and I had forgotten about it. In I want to say it's 97 or 9. It might be 1998. I became the first pitcher since the Second World War to blow a 4-0 lead in the bottom of the 9th all by myself. Yeah. I have gas bubbles just mentioning that. 4-0 lead, bottom of the 9th, 2-hitter. Things are going great. I'm done. Piazza singles to lead off the 9th. Ventura hits a 2-run homer. It's 4-2. Okay, no big deal. Inning battles back and forth, back and forth. I got 2 outs. I hit 2 guys in the inning. Flipped them. Ended up with the bases loaded and 2 outs. And Bill, this, honest to God, this is the conversation. Mike Lieberthal comes to the mound. John Olerud is at the plate. Mike Lieberthal comes to the mound and he looks at me and he says, hey, what do you want to do here? I said, I don't know. He's like looking at me. I go, I have nothing to get this guy out. I can't throw a pitch that he's not going to hit hard. And he's like, okay. I said, so let's do this. Let's throw a fastball away. Hope he lines it to left and Gant catches it and we get out of here with a tie game. Or Ronnie throws the guy out at home plate or something. He laughs and walks back to home plate. Fastball away, line drive, 1 hopper to Ron Gant left, late throw home, run scores, walk-off win. Walk-off loss. Yeah. I sat on the bench in Shea Stadium for probably like 2 hours. The buses were already gone. I was still in my uniform sitting on the bench. Like, it was the most miserable loss of my entire life. And I'll never, so when I see something like that happen to somebody as good as Gerrit Cole, that adds to the fact that I don't miss the game. I don't miss those. The highs were unbelievable, but I can't explain how the depths of the lows. And that's 4 days. Yes, I got to forget the game. I got to get ready for my next team. But every ounce of my fiber and my being is saying, I just blew a 6-0 lead. I just blew a 6-0 lead. And at the end of the year, when you're 19-5, that 6-0 lead, you're thinking, wow, okay, that's my 20th. That's on me. Ooh. So anyway, hopefully you learned a little bit about catching in the big leagues and about the fact that Willson Contreras is going to turn out to be an $87 million DH.
Hey, before we get out of here, Curt.
Yeah. Hey, also, let me say something real quick, Bill. Just for you people that might be new to the show, and Willson, maybe if you're listening, I have nothing personal against the guy. I've always enjoyed the guy. I think he's a very good player. But I also know baseballese. I know when I hear, and I'll use this example. Anytime you hear a player, anytime you ask a player as a fan, you ask a player about another player, there's 2 answers and only 2. Oh, phenomenal guy or anything else. Anything else means, I don't know, the guy's probably a dick or he's not a good teammate or whatever. And that's baseballese. Might be different now though, Bill. I mean, we're in a different generation, so that might be different, but that's how it was when I was coming up.
Speaking of different generations, couple of things happened this week.
One good, one bad.
One good, one bad. We'll start with the good.
Right.
One of the great guys, Willie Mays, turned 92.
And I believe there's an argument to be made that he was the greatest player ever.
There are a lot of people who played in his era who said exactly that. Yep.
And it actually leads to an uncomfortable story, which is everybody said Mickey Mantle was every bit as good as Willie Mays. If he hadn't run himself into the ground, he would have been Willie Mays.
Wow.
And Mr. Mays, by the way, one of the kindest, gentlest men I've ever met. 24. He didn't play 24 years in the big leagues. He was an all-star 24 times. The all-star game could be a fan thing, but 24 times, it's not a fluke. Won MVP twice, 660 homers, 339 stolen bases, 3,293 hits. Another reason why writers shouldn't vote for the Hall of Fame, because Willie Mays didn't get 100%.
Which makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. You should have lost your ballot if you didn't vote for Willie Mays. That's just asinine. And another reason why writers don't need to be voting.
Well, and the other thing, you missed the 12-time Golden Glove when you ripped that off. I don't ever remember a center fielder who covered as much ground and got to as many balls as he did.
Let me just say, I'm going to mention one name of a guy who I felt like, there's a couple guys, but one guy for sure that I watched that I felt was Willie Mays like was Andrew Jones.
Yep.
The other one who I very rarely saw in the prime of his career, everybody said, was Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, there's the Devon Whites of the world and guys like that, but those guys were on another level. And the sad news is the passing of a great at 73 years old, the last player in the major leagues to win in the American League, to win the MVP as a switch hitter. Pitcher Vida Blue passed away at 73, 209 career wins, 71 Cy Young Award. I didn't know the in-depth story about him and Mr. Finley and the fact that they really hated each other. Because if you remember the early 70s, which is when I got into baseball, the A's were about Billy Martin in complete games. Every pitcher on that staff, Matty Keough, Norris, Langford, McCaddy, those guys were every game was a complete game. Yeah. And Billy Martin ran through his starters, ran them ragged. Vida was that guy.
Well, Bowie Kuhn stopped him from being traded twice.
Yeah. In the best interest of the game.
Yankees and Reds, right?
Yep. Yeah, imagine the Yankees being in there. But rest in peace. A tremendous gentleman from everything I know. Ran into some trouble late in life. But I never heard a bad word about Mr. Blue from anybody that ever played against him or with him. Apparently, he could hit 100. And only Nolan was a guy who threw harder, and he was left-handed too. So,
right.
Thoughts and condolences, prayers to the extended Blue family, and happy birthday to I think probably might be the greatest player that ever played in Willie Mays, because he did it after integration. So he played against everybody, white, black, Hispanic, everybody, and I think the game was a different game then. So lots going on this week. We'll catch up on Friday. I want to talk about James Taillon, who's coming back with the Cubs. The Rays will probably still be rolling. I don't expect this Contreras story to go away because the media won't let it. Red Sox are playing very well. Chris Sale's getting healthy and bouncing up and down like I know he would. And
the Mets are playing awful baseball. They just lost their 4th series in a row.
Right.
That's another topic that has to be looked at. And the Yankees are struggling a bit, but I tend to be okay with people saying injuries, because the thing that was supposed to carry the Yankees was their offense, and for the most part, Judge and Stanton haven't been completely healthy this year. Not that that's an excuse, because everybody has it, but that's certainly something. So we'll catch up with the Red Sox, the Yankees on Friday. Bryce Harper is 7 for 16 and getting off like nobody's business. And actually, you know what? I'm going to close out with a better story. Liam Hendricks, who survived cancer. Well, he had the same thing John Lester had. He's made 2 rehab starts, and he's made 2 minor league appearances. And then he's done well, and done very well. And more importantly, he's healthy. So good for him. I'm glad to see that. And we'll catch up with you guys on Friday. OutKick.com. The Curt Schilling Baseball Show, Spotify as well. Check us out. Take care. Have a great week, Bill. I'll talk to you on Friday.